Okay. I think CIC is going to shrink a little bit during the summer, right? Because we're going to have folks leaving, traveling, whatnot. Where are you guys going to be going? Anybody? Where? Okay, U.S. Larry's going to be traveling. I think you said you're taking like what? You're on like 16 flights? Something like that. Very cool. So remember Larry and his family traveling. Anybody else? Where are you going, guys? Yeah? Australia? Awesome. Have a safe trip. And is it your daughter that's Luna? It is. Yeah, I met Luna for the first time today, and it's a cool name. Beautiful. She's beautiful. You guys know what Luna means? Yes? No? Can you explain it? Something about a moon. It means moon? Basically means moon, right? Luna? In what language? Latin. Awesome. So it's like, be a light in this dark world, sort of a thing. Is that kind of the meaning? Okay, cool. I got it right. All right. Yeah. Okay, Australia, US, anywhere else? Japan, anybody going to Japan? No? Okay. China? Yay. Hey, I'm guessing it. It's working, man. All right. Hey, movie that, you guys share your movies? Everybody? You did? Okay, I have one. I got to look this one up. I just saw this one on the plane, and you got to watch this, really. It's like a docu, so I don't know if you're into docus, but like, I don't know, there's some really cool docus, right? This one's like a family movie, so I mean, you can watch it, together with everybody, but it's called The Biggest Little Farm. Anybody heard of the movie? You have. Awesome. It's an awesome movie, right? I mean, it's like this couple, basically, dog lovers. They live in this apartment with this dog, but they both have to go to work, right? And so if the dog's fine when they're at home, but then as soon as they leave for work, it gets lonely, I guess, so it cries and, all this. And so the neighbors, in the apartment starts complaining big time. And so eventually, the word gets out and people just can't handle it. So they're given like, I think 1 month notice, you have to leave. And they figure, they don't have a choice, but they figure if they move to another apartment, the same thing's gonna happen. They're gonna be kicked out, because of their dog. And they can't get rid of the dog, so they don't know what to do. So they decide to find people who's willing to invest, with them into buying this huge property. And they decided to farm. So, they have all kinds of animals, and anyway, it's cool. So during your break, I highly recommend it. The Biggest Little Farm. I think Korean title, 위대한 작은 농장, something like that. So I think it's in Korean subtitles or whatever too. So one video I'm going to show real quick, because some of you know that I'm a unicyclist. I love uni. And so each week, actually this month, I'm going to begin this series with a short video clip of somebody riding a unicycle. So let's watch this real quick. contest, I think, in 2022, I think, a couple years ago. But any unicyclists in the room? Yay, nay? Okay, I guess not. But how many of you saw me in the video? No one? Okay, because I wasn't in the video, so that was a joke. But I do love to ride unicycle, and basically, I show you this because the title of my series is called Balancing Act. And in order to be able to ride the uni, it takes balancing skills. And so does riding a bicycle, motorcycle, pretty much any sports, right? And not only sports, but from day-to-day routines of life, you know, in relationships, in academia, in whatever, in the marketplace. Basically, it really takes art of balancing, doesn't it? Anyway, I think it does. So basically this month, we're going to look at certain passages in the Bible that maybe teach us, shed us some light about balancing. And today, I want to share from a short passage from Genesis. It's going to be Genesis 28, 16, and 17. And I'm going to read this from the Message version of the Bible. Jacob woke up from his sleep. He said, God is in this place, truly, and I didn't even know it. Let me just pause here for a quick second. And have you ever had those moments, maybe God moment, and you realize, ooh, I didn't really notice. I didn't really get it, but I think God was here. God was in that moment. This is Jacob's experience, right? That's what he says. He was terrified. He whispered in awe, incredible, wonderful, holy. This is God's house. This is the gate of heaven. So Jacob experiences, I mean, you know about Jacob from the Old Testament, but he has this aha moment or maybe God moment where he realizes all of a sudden, and sometimes it happens to us too, right? We can encounter God like in a dream. We can encounter God or experience Him when we are actually talking to somebody, or maybe we feel like, oh, you know what? That person that I just encountered, that person very well could have been an angel. God sent angel that I just encountered. Or we have different, maybe we're reading the Bible, maybe we're part of a small group Bible study, or worship, personal worship maybe. And we, in that moment, can encounter God in a very real way, right? This is what happens to Jacob in this passage. He has a God moment. He says, I didn't even know it, but God was truly there. Sometimes life feels very alone, and I think Jacob had those moments as well, especially spending lots of time in the wilderness, right? He had that experience where he felt life was just solo, all by himself, no one to help him, and no way out of the wilderness. I don't know if you ever experienced that, but the Bible reminds us over and over that we are not alone, right? There's a passage in 1 Kings 18:44 where Elijah notices a small cloud in the sky. Actually, in the Hebrew word, it's described as being smaller than someone's hand. Maybe it just looked that small, right? But it was that small cloud that served as a sign for rain. And that's what Elijah noticed. And he spoke out and said, God's going to send us rain. In the context of that passage in the Old Testament, in 1 Kings 18, drought was now in its third year. I mean, imagine that. Very dry and barren land on its third year. I mean, can you imagine? No rain means no crops, right? No crops means no food. No food means starvation, basically. And starvation means misery and eventual death. But in this very dry and barren land, God brought rain, and with rain, life. Repeatedly, this is what God does, affirming His presence in our lives, right? I don't know if you ever catch the flu, or some of you had COVID and whatnot, right? But one time I remember I just had a terrible flu. What do we call flu in Korean? 몸살? Something like that, right? Any of you had one of those recently? Flu, COVID, 몸살, 감기. Anyway, you get the drift, right? And it was a bad case, right? I mean, you've all experienced it. And then our youngest daughter, all of a sudden, she sees me, watches me, struggling, and she goes, "Dad, what's it? How do you actually feel?" So I'm trying to explain. I'm feeling like horrible, right? And I'm still trying to explain to her, how I'm actually feeling. So I'm like, I can't remember if I said it in Korean or English, but I have this like bad headache, and like the world is spinning constantly. My throat hurts. My whole body is like aching and throbbing, and like I don't feel any hunger. I don't even want to look at food. I don't want to meet anybody. I don't want to talk to anybody. 그래서 막 머리가 막 너무 아프고 막 허리가 끊어질 것 같고 막 몸이 다 안 쑤시는 데가 없고. And then all of a sudden, I explained all this because she wants an explanation. And all of a sudden she goes, "Dad, I think you're about to drop dead." That's probably right. She was pretty accurate. But in that moment, I came to the realization, that's right, I can die. We can all die at any given moment. It was kind of like an aha moment for me. It was almost like a God moment for me. Reality check, right? But a lot of times we feel like dying, whether from sickness or loneliness. Jacob in this passage probably felt like dying more than once. But then he realizes in this moment, what did he realize? God's very presence. God showed up. And he does the same for us, doesn't he? He shows up again and again. In spite of our life's challenges and difficulties, he's there. We watched this little video clip of these guys riding the uni, but what are some words that begin with uni? Can you name some? There's a lot, right? I brought a list here with me, but university, universe, right? Unicorn, unicolor, unisex, uniforms, unification, unilateral, Unitarian. Any other? What are some other words that you can think of? There's a lot, right? Unicycle is another one, right? A unicycle only has one wheel. I mean, we all know that, which makes it that much more difficult to balance than your typical bicycle. We might have some bikers in the room, but it certainly requires balancing skills to ride a two-wheel bicycle as well. So in that sense, they have similarities. But sometimes life feels like riding a uni. It can feel like that. It feels like a struggle. It's wobbly, right? You have to use your entire body to like balance yourself, and you still fall. I've fallen so many times trying to learn this, skill of just not falling. It takes hours and hours, right? And if you've learned how to ride a bicycle, you've probably had the same type of experience. Because if you can't balance yourself, you fall off over and over again. And just like the single wheel of a uni, you feel all alone a lot of times with no other wheel to support you in order to keep you from falling. When I first picked up the unicycle, I would fall a million times, literally. I would try my best not to fall, but it didn't work for the longest time. And I heard from someone that babies have to fall 1,000 times before they eventually learn how to walk and run. It's a balancing act, isn't it, that we all have to learn. I'm going to show you this real short clip of a baby trying to learn how to walk, taking their first steps. It's pretty cool. Let's watch this. as these precious little ones try to take their first steps, who did they have beside them? Parents, family. But what did they do? Did you notice anything? They were cheering them on, right? They're super excited when they take their first steps. Luna, it's going to be you soon. She's going to, right? Yeah, and I mean, when we feel most alone, think about that. We need people, we need folks, we need church family who cheer us on, and God is there to cheer us on as well, just like he was cheering on Jacob, letting him know, I'm there. I'm there in the wilderness with you. I'm right there. Don't forget that, right? But again, life is a balancing act, isn't it? And we can't do it alone because we're not intended. God did not intend us to do life alone, but he wanted us to do life in community, right? There's a movie called A Man Called Ove. It's a Swedish comedy, I don't know if you've seen this one, based on a novel under the same title. Ove is a grumpy old man who finds himself alone since his wife's passing. He's become somewhat antisocial as a result, and he's just comfortable doing life alone. I'm going to show you this clip without sound, I'm going to just walk through this movie real quick, but if you get a chance, I'd recommend this movie as well. And then making matters worse, he gets fired from his job at age 59. So he's even more upset and grumpy at life now, right? Nothing's going right. Everything's going south, it seems. He sees no hope. He senses no hope. He thinks that, life is meaningless. His wife is gone. His job is gone. He has no friends. He has no purpose in life. He has nothing. At least that's how he feels. Eventually, he decides to give up on life. He wants to die and makes a grandiose plan to kill himself by hanging, actually. But nothing seems to work for him. The movie is basically like black comedy. Like one day he's trying to hang himself in his apartment, and then a neighbor moves in, and they have trouble like parking their stupid car, okay? I mean, does that make sense? So he's trying to hang himself, but he sees a neighbor who can't park, so he has to go out and try to help them park their car. And this kind of stuff happens over and over again. And so he gets the message eventually, oh, maybe, trying to take my life is not God's design. It's not the thing for me. But there's a part in the movie where he finds a reason to go on with life. It's this annoying neighbor that constantly shows up again and again. The neighbor's kids bring food, for example. They bring snacks, they bring drinks, and they ask for help. And this happens over and over again. He gets frustrated, but he eventually realizes that he actually has a neighbor and people around him that cares about him. I think he realized in that moment that he was not alone. Just like Jacob in the Old Testament passage that we just read. He realized in that moment, in that God moment, that he was not alone. So the beginning of the movie shows this grumpy old man who seems hopeless and miserable and complacent. But in the end, it shows how grateful he is because of the neighbor that became his friends. Remember the story of Jacob, that we shared in the Old Testament a little bit ago? Another part of the story in the Old Testament about Jacob shows that he was madly in love with a girl by the name of Rachel, right? But he was forced to work 7 years for her father, right? For the father-in-law, Laban, if he wanted to marry her. So he did for 7 years. I mean, that's a long time, isn't it? Can you imagine? Working 7 years to earn the right to marry someone's daughter? He did. He didn't give up for 7 years. Well, at the end of those 7 years, he realized it was a trick by his father-in-law. Instead of Rachel, Laban gave him the other daughter, Leah, right? If he still wanted to marry Rachel, he would have to work another 7 years. So basically, he had to work and wait for 14 years in order to be able to, have Rachel as his bride. Our lives often feel quite fragile. I'm sure Jacob felt very fragile. About to break. We feel off balance. Kind of like riding a unicycle. Because it's pretty wobbly when you ride that thing. It's not as steady like a bicycle. You have to keep it steady by using your entire body. Even still, it feels wobbly at times. But you see, life is like that, isn't it? In the movie, this guy thought he was all alone. He thought that he didn't really matter. And as if his life didn't count. He thought that no one cared, so he came to the conclusion that he was better off gone, better off dead, until he began to realize that there were people that cared about him deeply. Jacob's life, we know him as someone that had to wait 14 years for his wife Rachel. But there's more to his life than that. He was someone that wrestled with God in the wilderness, and he experienced that God moment where God whispered to him, I am here. I've been here for you all along. So God showed him that he was not alone by showing up in his life. And he does the same for us, doesn't he? This is our takeaway for today, okay? If you can remember this and the passage that we read, that'd be awesome. You have a community, each and every one of us, that cares for you, right? And you also have a God who knows you and cares about you deeply. We're going to sing this last song as Alex comes back and leads us this last song. And let's stand together to sing this song, and then we'll close in prayer.